uh, the new chapter of the book we are supposed to study together. Uh, Chapter 3 of the book, The Practical Teaching by David Newman, is all about speaking. But before I start, can you please confirm the quality of my voice and let me know if you can see the screen? Uh, you may type down OK in the chat box if the voice quality and the quality of the screen share is. Yeah, thank you. More people are joining us. Um, yes, 14 participants. Chapter 3 is all about speaking. As we previously mentioned, speaking is uh, kind of a productive skill that requires some kind of practice. During this chapter, we will just dive deep into the content of what the speaking is all about, different types of tasks. Um, uh, During speaking, to let's say practice your language proficiency, I will let you know about how and within the help of what techniques teachers actually and promote a student's speaking skill. I would be grateful if your students come just on time. It is 3:32, a bit late. Please be punctual because when you join us during my lecture, I just lose my train of thoughts and I don't know what exactly I was talking about. If you have a look at page 48, you may see that we have a kind of definition of what speaking is all about. Uh, Speaking is something simple, but I mean, you have good understanding of what the speaking is about. But my understanding tells me that many of you are not familiar with the terminologies about how they can define speaking. On page 48, we have a definition of what speaking is all about. It consists of producing systematic verbal utterances to convey meaning. um, when we say utterance, we mean something that is, if I ask you in the final exam about what an utterance is, you can say, for example, more than a word, but less than a sentence. This is the definition, the technical definition of an utterance, like, for example, be that as it may, that as it may, this type of utterance can be used when, for example, you don't care about the consequences of something. Uh, you have it, therefore, this is the definition of speaking. Speaking is something systematic. What kind of systematicity? It is a systematic verbal utterance to convey meaning. I mean, it has got a linear fashion, it is step by step. And therefore, if you have a look at these two, let's say, lines, you may have the ability to just understand, to distinguish what, um, sorry, you can have the ability to distinguish speaking from reading. Reading and writing are totally different from speaking. How are they different? There are two underlying, I may say, proofs. The first one is going to be, unlike reading or writing, speaking happens in real time. Usually, the person you're talking to is waiting for you to speak right then. Therefore, when we're talking about the speaking, you have to consider the fact that speaking is something spontaneous, and you cannot have longer. I mean, you cannot have some moments of reflections on what the speaker says or is saying. Therefore, you have to be your spontaneous self. The second reason is that when you speak, you cannot edit or revise what you wish to say as you can if you're writing. Therefore, when because speaking is something spontaneous, you may not have the ability to go back and correct what you want to say. If you have a look at the group that we have on Telegram, and you will see kind of let's say terminologies I sent to you. It is all about the channel, field, and mode and tenor. If you again go back to the book, you may see that by channel we mean It refers to the medium of a message. It can be oral or written. And some two more terminologies are field. Field is I'm talking about our Telegram group. Field is concerned with purpose and the subject matter of a communication. Mode refers to the means by which communication take place. It can be by a speech or by writing. Mode can be a synonym, can be considered a synonym for channel. And the tenor means participant. Who your participants are can actually determine the way that you talk to them. Therefore, if you have a look at here by comparing and contrasting spoken language with written language, you can better understand what a spoken language is really like. A spoken language is auditory, but written language is visual. A spoken language is temporary in nature. It requires immediate receptions of the type of input that you're exposed to, but written language is permanent. You can have delayed reception. If you do not understand, for example, the meaning of a paragraph or something, you can go back to it and see what it means. You can ask ChatGPT. But if a native speaker is speaking and you do not have immediate reception of what that guy is talking about, you will be faced with some problems. A spoken language require prosody. What I mean by prosody, I mean rhythm, stress, and intonation. We will just talk about them later on. We call them suprasegmental features. But in written language, you have to be careful about punctuations. I mean, comma, semicolon, colon. In a spoken language, you will receive hot feedback. By hot feedback, I mean immediate feedback. For example, if you say something and another person provides feedback on you, you can like go back and reformulate what you said. But in written language, normally it is delayed or no feedback. A spoken language requires planning and editing limited by channel, but written language is unlimited planning, editing, and revision. Nobody, I mean, I'm not talking about the context of high stake tests like IELTS or TOEFL, but in any other, let's say, uh, test, you will have the chance to just plan your written language. Therefore, given these differences between writing and speech, you can see why people who learn a foreign language largely from textbooks often sound bookish when they speak. If you talk to your university professor, you may see that the selection of his words are totally different from a native speaker. But we have many professors who sound like native people, and there are so many examples of them. If I want to give you a kind of background to teaching a speaking, you may see that in autolingualism, repetition is a key, let's say, concept. We have repetition of the drills, and that repetition of the drills means the teacher normally repeats what he intends or he or she intends the students to learn. For example, look at here. The teacher says, "Repeat, please. Good morning, Maria." And the student says, "Good morning, Maria. Where are you going? Where are you going?" You may see that the same sort of turns happen between the teacher and the students. And the a student is simply repeating what the teacher is saying in order to sound like a person who knows the target language. I'm talking about the kind of language that the learners is aiming to learn. In this case, it is English. Therefore, repetition drills is mostly practice in classes in which autolingualism is being practiced. Autolingualism is somehow influenced by structuralism. We previously talked about it, that you have to know the structure of the language, the grammar, and also behaviorism. Language learning for behaviorists is is like kind of a habit. The concept of habit formation of behaviorism is the theoretical basis of the autolingual method. Since learners needed to form good habits, less lessons involved a great deal of repetition. Students were not supposed to form bad habits, so teachers treated spoken errors correctly, quickly. In behaviorism, if you mispronounce a word or something, it is treated as kind of a taboo or something, and therefore uh, you have to be careful about the type of errors that you commit or the mistakes that you make. So teachers worried that if errors were left untreated, the students might learn those erroneous forms. And moving on, so you can have a look at autolingualism and behaviorism according to the like a kind of speaking oriented perspective. We also have CLT. CLT, as most of you know, stands for Communicative Language Teaching. The purpose of CLT is just teaching students how to interact well, and therefore, in such a context, negotiation of form, negotiation of meanings is somehow important. When we are talking about CLT and the world of teaching, there exist two other terms. One of them is focus on form. The other one is going to be focus on forms, which are totally different. When I say focus on form, that means you just come to the class for the sake of teaching students how to talk, how to, for example, interact well. But when we are talking about focus on forms, I mean, you come here, yes, you just want to teach them the language functions. That means for what purposes do we want to learn the language? Do you want to talk to native speaker? Do you want to travel? Do you want to, I don't know. And focus on forms, we mean you just come to the class for the sake of teaching them separate entities, I mean, separate and discrete linguistic items, such as, for example, tenses. When we say focus on forms, that means you come here for the sake of teaching them present continuous. But when we say focus on form, you just teach them the use of present continuous. For example, in what situation native speakers might use present continuous. My discussion is pretty much in line with two versions of CLT. The first one is the Vic version, says teachers should teach the components of language, but include uh, communication activities. The Vic version is like, um, let's say, more like focus on forms. You come to the class, you teach them present continuous, and at the same time, you teach them communication activities. But the strong version is like focus on more is more similar to focus on form. The strong version says since students learn through interacting, lessons should consist of opportunities to communicate in the target language. In this method, teachers often downplay accuracy and emphasize how students communicate when they speak the target language. So this is it. There is a guy called Peter Scahan. You must have heard of him in the world of language teaching. He has got a theory which is all about dual mode system. In dual mode system, he says, uh, like we have a kind of I may say relationship between fluency, accuracy, and complexity. Uh, yes, he says you may just think of a seesaw. I wonder if you know what a seesaw is. Seesaw are, let's say, objects to be found in parks. So children normally jump on them and they enjoy riding them. If you think of a seesaw, if on one half of this seesaw we have the accuracy and on another saddle we have fluency, if fluency goes up, the accuracy is going to go down, and vice versa. If for example accuracy goes up, in I mean in my speech, if I just want to be accurate about the grammatical sentences I make, my fluency is going to be somehow ignored. And the same thing is true for fluency, complexity, accuracy, complexity, stuff like that. Therefore, um, this is not bad if you just search it, Peter Scahan, dual mode system. It may help you understand the concept of this book better. We have a pyramid on page 51. This pyramid has got, let's say, different layers. On the bottom layer, I mean, the base layer, you may see text, you may see utterance, you may see clause, you may see phrase, you may see word, you may see morphemes, phonemes. But how are they different? When we say text, we mean a stretch of language of an undetermined length. It can be about a paragraph, about two paragraphs, or longer than that. And an utterance is something that someone says. Mostly when we are talking about utterance, it is something in the spoken language. It has nothing to do with the written language. And the concept is not that much used, uh, I mean, in writing, but it is more of spoken language. Then we have clause, phrase, word, morpheme, and phoneme. You may see that they are, I mean, we have different brackets in here. Discourse means the study of discourse in Latin means to argue without fighting. In linguistic, it is the study of language beyond the level of sentence, especially in conversation, to see what someone's intended message is. Syntax has something to do with grammar. Morphology, oology, means the scientific study of morphemes, like how words, I mean, are connected to one another to form a meaning, and phonology is at the level of sounds. But we need more elaboration about different layers. We know what text is. Text means a stretch of language of an undetermined length. Utterance is more than a word and less than a sentence. But what is the difference between clause and a phrase? The difference is available on top of page 52. A phrase is two or more words which function as a unit but do not have a subject or a verb marked for tense. A phrase is something that does not have a verb, or if it has got a verb, that verb does not have a tense marker. By tense marker, I mean, for example, the case of ing for present continuous, the third person as for present simple, ed for past simple. Look at here, to the store or after breakfast. This is a phrase, okay? Because we do not know who or what the subject is, and we do not have any understanding of what the verb here can be. Okay, you can look up to the store after the breakfast. You can eat something. You can go to the store after, for example, eating breakfast. We don't know exactly what the verb is. So the one of the features that phrase has that may set it apart from other things, such as clauses, sentences, is that it does not have a verb, or the subject is unknown. And if it has got a verb, that verb does not have a tense marker. But clause or clauses are two or more words that often do contain a verb marked for tense. Therefore, when we have John ate the cake, so you may see that the past form of eat here is cake, is ate, and therefore it is past simple. So we are here understanding the difference between clause and phrase. But what about a word and morpheme? A word, is normally like, um, is, I may say, a combination of letters, of English letters that are always associated with use of articles. I mean, like a cat, for example.
هو
Okay,
يشتغل.
here's somebody speaking. Yeah. Uh, we have some noises coming from Elham Amin Kazem. Sorry. When we are talking about word, I mean something that is normally used with articles like a or an. When we are talking about morphemes can be of two types. They can be free morphemes, they can be bound morphemes. Uh, you have already studied these things in the linguistic book of George Yule, or um, I may say that of Fromkin. A bound morpheme, like for example, think of hat, think of flea. These things they can stand uh, in isolation. These are free morphemes. But what is a bound morpheme? Bound morpheme, like tion, added to the end of verbs to make nouns. Like, bound morphemes are like affixes. They can be prefixes or suffixes that often stick to the beginning or end of words, and they cannot stand in isolation. And the last layer of this pyramid is all about phoneme. Phoneme is something inside your mind. It is all about kind of a sound or something in the language that distinguishes the meaning. Think of, for example, these pairs, like uh, we call them minimal pairs, like pit and bit. The sound p at the beginning that is used between two slashes in here, and the sound b in here, uh, they have totally different usages. Pay is voiceless, but bay is voice. I mean, their articulatory features are totally different from one another. And by only replacing one phoneme with another, you can change the intended meaning. And vowels, such as, for example, the case of short E in bit and A in bat. It doesn't make difference. When we say phoneme, it can be a vowel, it can be a consonant inside your mind that can cause changes in meanings. And these things, such as I'm talking about consonants and vowels, they're being referred to as segmental phonemes, but, or sometimes you may refer to them as distinctive features. But we also have some of the features that are suprasegmental features. What are they? They are a stress, rhythm, and intonation. A stress, rhythm, and intonation. I'm talking about these three. A stress, rhythm, and intonation. They're suprasegmental features, and by changing your intonation, by changing the stress pattern, you can change the intended meaning. Here, you're given some, I may say, phrases. The point of emphasis here is on either the first verb, the first pronoun, or the second verb, but the intended meaning is going to be different. Look at this one. Here we have I think I know. Okay, the bold italic typeface of I here means you may not know, you may not think I know the answer, but I'm pretty sure I do. Yes, I think I know. Okay, but if you say I think I know means you may not know the answer, but I think I do. Mostly politicians, like the case of Obama, when he's talking to the lady, I'm talking about people in general. Mostly, he adds some element of emphasis on the use of pronouns, and when he says "I think I know," that means he has got negative other representation and positive self. He looks at himself as the U.S. president as the most important person, or a person with great knowledge, but this is not the case actually, right? So, but the other one, I think I know, is going to be I'm not entirely sure, but I think I know the answer. Okay, I think I know means I'm not unsure. I'm quite confident that I know the answer. And so the point of emphasis here, I mean, stress or intonation can change the intended meaning. I can provide you with some other examples in English language as well. Like think of, I don't know, contract, and think of contract, one as a verb and the other one as a noun. When emphasis is on the first syllable, it's going to be like a noun, but when the stress is on second syllable, it's going to be a verb. Think of increase and increase. Increase is going to be a noun, increase is going to be a verb. So the meaning is going to be distorted if you do not observe these supersegmental phonemes. There are a couple of principles for teaching and speaking. Teaching and speaking is going to be very important. It is something context specific. You have foreign language context and second language context. You have to know their differences. In foreign language context, uh, this is a type of context in which one where the target language is not the language of communication in the society. Like think of Iran. Here we teach English as a foreign language, right? Foreign language. Here in Iran, English is treated as a language that normally is associated with some of the values, with some of the American values or European values, and it is not favored by the politicians. Learning speaking skills is very challenging for students in foreign language context. Why? Because they have very few opportunities to use the target language outside the classroom. If you take my classes, at school, uh, in Iran's context, students, when they leave my classroom, they do not have a chance to talk, for example, to a shopkeeper in English. They do not have a chance to talk to a baker in English. And because of that, when they want to migrate, when they want to step out of Iran and, let's say, go to foreign countries, like the case of European countries, they might be faced with so many problems because they are not familiar with the norms of native speakers. But teaching speaking in a second language context is different. A second language context is one where the target language is the language of communication in the society, such as English in the UK or Spanish in the Mexico. Second language learners include refugees, international students, and immigrants. Some second language learners, especially those who arrive in their new country as children, achieve notable speaking skills, but many others progress to a certain proficiency level and then go no further. This kind of claim is pretty much in line with what we call in second language acquisition critical age hypothesis. What this hypothesis is about, it says if, for example, you want to go to a foreign country, if you are, below the age of puberty, by puberty, I mean a kind of age in which a person is considered a fully grown person, a complete adult. If you're if you are below the age of puberty, you can master different aspect of language. Like if you take some, uh, I mean, say Iranian children, and you take them to America, they will have a chance to master different aspects of language. But if you take adult Iranians to America, they will master all aspects of language except pronunciation and phonology of the language. Is something not available to them. They cannot master the pronunciation the way children do. And this point is like an exact inference, has got an exact, I may say, reference to what we have in critical age hypothesis. We had enough of talk about fluency and accuracy. In speaking, you should practice both of them. By accuracy, we mean the extent to which a student's speech matches what people actually say when they use the target language. By fluency, we mean the extent to which speakers use the language quickly and confidently with few hesitations or unnatural pauses, false starts, word searches. Even if you're searching for some words, that means you are not a fluent person. It happens to everybody. You know, you remember, for example, some words, but you remember some sounds of it, not the exact letters. And because of that, you might be searching for it. You should provide opportunities for a student to talk by using group or pair work and limiting the teacher talk. Depending on who your target audience are, if, for example, you're teaching at university or if you're teaching in private institute at school, the teacher talking time should be different. For example, elementary students, you may not expect them to just talk, and you have to give them a hand with their speaking. But when it comes, for example, to master classes, to PhD students, you can provide them with lecture, and hopefully students can understand what you're trying to do. And when you assign students to different groups, like you ask them to work in pairs or teach them individually, you need to ask them to involve negotiation for meaning. For example, if a student understand something, you ask them, for example, to pose these two questions when they do not understand the meaning of a certain word. What does something mean, or what is the meaning of something? What is the meaning of? Sorry, I was disconnected. What does something mean, or what is the meaning of something? Um, okay, do you hear me right now? Um, Somebody was about to talk. Yeah, but you don't need to raise your hand. My voice is broke. I don't know. Maybe it is the quality of my internet. I'm not sure about it. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, when you teach them such structures, they can negotiate for meaning. Research suggests that learners make progress by communicating in the target language because interaction necessarily involves trying to understand and make yourself understood. And this is the main point why people are attending English language classes. Okay? You may ask them, for example, to not to feel ashamed to ask for clarification. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? Or ask ask you for repetition, or ask for further explanations during conversations. These are not taboo things. I mean, many people are afraid of asking for clarification, but this is a very good point actually about it. Design classroom activities that involve guidance and practice in both transactional and interactional speaking. When we say interactional speaking, uh, we mean communicating with someone for social purposes. You want to, for example, make friends with someone, so you talk to them in English. It includes both establishing and maintaining social relationships, which is good. Transactional speech involves communicating to get something done, including the exchange of goods or services, right? So you might be thinking of Pidgin or Creole, I mean, the type of language spoken by businessmen. and in which, for example, they get something done with the help of English. What is important, the most important point in this chapter, in this book chapter, are different types of techniques and tasks. One of them is going to be information gap tasks. The other one is going to be jigsaw activities. Information gap is useful activity in which one person has information that the other lacks. They must use the target language to share that information. You, for example, assign them to different groups. You say, okay, students A student B, you put some students in group A's and you put some other students in group B's. Students A's, they have some specific information. For example, they have some information about Iraq, and B students, they have some information about Iran. Okay, so their information are not similar. You ask them to just work with one another and talk about for example, the culture that we have in Iran and in Iraq, or you assign them with some task in which they are supposed to exchange information about these two countries. Jigsaw activities are a little bit more complicated than information gap. They are bidirectional or multi-directional information gap. What does it mean? That means each person in a pair or group has some information the other persons need. For example, one student could have a timetable for train travel in Canada, another could have a map of Canada without showing each other the visual information. They must speak English to plan a 1 week trip. In jigsaw activities, you always have some realias. I mean, visual information. You may just, for example, ask them to bring a dictionary to the class or something which may help facilitate their spoken task. We also have tango sitting. In tango sitting, students sit back to back. They cannot see one another, but their shoulders are stuck and they're facing the opposite direction. This is going to be something, a kind of good activity in which the arrangement allows, the students to hear one another, but not see what is being drawn or constructed in a partner's desk. We also have role plays. There are also excellent activities for speaking in the relatively safe environment of the classroom. In a role play, students are given particular roles in the target language. This is similar to what we previously talked about in TBLT, task based language teaching. For example, you may ask one student to play the role of a tourist telephoning the police to report his wallet is stolen. The other plays the role of a police officer trying to help the tourist file a report. Simulations are similar to role plays, but except one difference. For simulations, students, you have to find the appropriate settings or context in which kind of a talk happens. For example, you ask one person to buy something and another person sells something in a grocery store. You see, simulations are more elaborate than role plays. In a simulation, props and documents provide a somewhat realistic environment for language practice. So if they speak the language in realistic environment, for example, you send them to some stores, to some shop to speak English, to buy something, this is going to be like simulations. Contact assignment involves sending students out of the classroom with a stated purpose. For example, you teach them some structures, for example, how to break the ice, how to uh, kick off a conversation with a native speaker, but you ask them to go to a palace or a cultural place in which the possibility of visiting a native speaker is high, and then ask them to talk to those guys. Okay, so contact assignments in foreign language contexts, it can be possible if they're tourist exchange students or international business purposes, for students to talk to in the target language in a train station or at a ferry terminal. For example, students can interview tourists. Afterwards, the tourists compile the result of the class survey and report what they learned. But what you have to be careful about is unequal power discourse. The way I've seen many of you liking, for example, what I sent in the group, or you put I don't know, you put a tick on it, you put, I don't know, kind of thumbs up, so as to show that you agree with everything. And I may say kind of a student's professor talk are this way, in which the students is powerless and the professor is powerful. But this is a kind of wrong assumption about these relationships. Of course, there exists some kind of power discourse, but that doesn't mean that the students have to be obedient. They have to be yes men or yes women, not daring to question or challenge the professor. And this is very important. That is, the teacher usually has the power to determine topics. If I say, okay, guys, today we are going to discuss, for example, water pollution, chemical pollution, the students do not have the right to complain or go for a different topic. The teacher gives feedback and asks most of the questions, among other things. You may have a look at some of the examples which are given in here. I think I'm done with this chapter. Sorry for talking about some time. Sometimes I do have this feeling that my classes are going to be boring, but I mean, the nature of this book, I mean, requires such a thing in which the professor is talking on and on about a topic, and the students are listeners. The quality will improve in face-to-face classes. So, in this chapter, we learned that speaking is the productive oral skill, and we contrasted a speech with writing. So, it is highly likely that one of your question for the final exam is going to be the differences between a speech and writing. We noted that the speaking a second or foreign language is far from simple. In fact, speaking, especially in a language other than our own, is quite a complex undertaking which involves using all the different levels of language. This chapter focused on 5 principles for planning speaking lessons in language classrooms. We examined 3 transcripts from actual lessons, ranging from tightly teacher controlled to teacher fronted. When we say teacher fronted, we mean everything is in the hand of the teacher. Like the teacher chooses the task, the teacher chooses the topics, and you have to act accordingly. And conversational, to highly conversational and not under a teacher's control. Many of you asked me for the exam questions, what the exam questions from this chapter might be about. I may just introduce 3 candidates. One of them is going to be the first candidate is going to be the difference between a spoken language and written language. This is a super important point in this chapter that you have to study and learn about. Another one is going to be like super segmental features. Super segmental features are available on page. Let me just tell you about the page number. Super segmental features are on here in this paragraph on page 53. And if I ask you to explain uh, with tangible examples, you have to provide me with these examples. I think I know. I think I know. I think I know. I think I know. So this is also important. And the last point, which is important to me, is going to be the type of task and techniques that can be used in a spoken oriented classroom. The first one was information gaps, the other one was jigsaw activities, role plays, simulations, and so on and so forth. Uh, if you don't have any questions, I may just say goodbye to you till next week. I sent a kind of technical terms that have to be observed in conversation classes that is being referred to as proxemics. I would be grateful if you just check the group. I mean, our Telegram group. Uh, yeah, we have the definition of what proxemics is. Um, Proxemics is the study of the physical distance between people when they are talking to each other, as well as their postures and whether or not there is a physical contact during the conversation. These factors can be looked at about sex, age, and social and cultural background of people involved, and also their attitudes toward each other and their state of mind. So, this is another important point that was not mentioned, but can be good if you know this. One of your classmates asked me a question, or he ordered me, Mohammed, I don't know what his surname is, at 3:09 p.m. He asked me to just, uh, come into the class. But our class officially starts at 3:30. Therefore, at that time, I might not be available. Yes, yes, for time being, but now, yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have any question about the content? If there exists any, you may ask me. If not, uh, I will say goodbye to everybody till next week. These are further references that you may have a look at. Bailey, 1994. This book is old fashioned, but it is still being taught uh, in language teaching classes. Brown and Yule, 1983. Uh, you know, an approach based on the analysis of conversational English. Uh, like, for example, the case of turn taking and repair might be, uh, let's say, explained in detail in this source. Will be please next week, Mohammed. It's going to be next week almost. Each week you come here and I cover one chapter. I don't want my class to be boring. Because of that, I do not cover more than one chapter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Uh, here they just asked me to teach you, but the decisions are not up to me. But I will talk to the dean of faculty, Dr. Nejati, about that, and I may ask him to just give me the chance to postpone your class. Yeah, I do understand that. When it comes to holidays and uh, occasions like this, I don't want students to be in my classes, but sometimes things go out of my hand, and because of that, as a professor, I do not have the chance to just say something bravely and insist on my position. But I will let you know in the group before next week. Yeah, my pleasure. I shared the PDF file with you in the morning. If you like, you may just have a look at the highlighted version of this chapter. Any further questions? If not, you may just leave the forum. Yeah, no question. During the week, if you're studying the PDF, if you're faced with any question, you may just ask me, and I would be grateful if you just ask such questions to explain things in details. If not, I may just say goodbye and have a nice day.